from electoral observers who have been monitoring this pre-election preparations even to today. They were talking about issues around security and vote buying. They were worried, they raised those concerns that you might have vote buying play out in this election and then some security challenges as well. Talked about issues of cultism. Have you witnessed anything like that? And has there been any report of something like that?
Okay, so the issue of vote buying, nobody, of course, is done in secrecy. Vote buying and vote selling is actually done in secrecy. It's not done in the open, compared to what probably some person said they saw in Ekiti. But you can't rule out the fact that these things are happening. From where I am, I've not seen any, but feelers from different points have said that vote buying are occurring in some places, but hidden from the people. And you talked about security, driving down from Oshogo into Iwo, the barricade, and of course the soldiers at the different border towns are making sure that everybody that is coming into the different border towns are being checked. Don't forget, there's been a curfew since 12 p.m. last night into 6 p.m. Today. So some persons who are not supposed to be on the road are being turned back. So the people who come from the neighboring, some persons who come from the neighboring states, or some persons who come from the neighboring town, from Iwo down to Lengo, and of course some other parts. If you are not voting, you must be able to, you must go back to where you are coming from. So the security in terms of the interlands, well, of course, well taken care of. And the security around the polling booths. If you can see, you see the NCDC. Of course, they are here. I saw the police not too far. Okay, so you can see the policeman here. The policeman here is trying to make sure that everybody is in law and order is actually kept. So he's even giving them numbers. He's even giving them numbers so that they don't have rankles do not occur around this area.
That's our correspondent, Demola Lawrence, live for us there in, I think, in Osun State, as we're monitoring the exercise. Now, let's now bring in an analyst in the studio, Richard Oshiomhole. Good to have you join us. I want to start from the picture we saw last, which was quite interesting, that of the security agent who was giving numbers to those on the queue. And it seems like it's trying to ensure that everything is done orderly, is orderly. What's your thought on that picture in terms of the role that security agencies are now playing in this election compared to what we've seen before?
Yeah, it's an improvement from what we used to have, and it shows we are improving, growing, by the day and by each of the exercise, and the civility and the trust in the system is also growing. That the patience people are having about the process, is encouraging as well, and we can only hope for more of this. So the more of this we have, the more confidence in the system, the better for the polity and the democracy itself.
Yes. And assess this particular election is still on. People are still voting. It's already 2 p.m., which is supposed to be the end. Yes. But I think INEC will always make allowance for those who are already on the queue. But give us an assessment of this particular conduct of this particular exercise coming from Anambra to Ekiti and now Osun.
Yeah, if you look at Anambra, that was a bit volatile. Leading to that election, you can recollect so much lives that were lost, and we just couldn't wait to get over that election. Thank God we had the Anambrans were able to express and exercise their franchise, constitutional role in that election, and largely we haven't seen much of a dispute around that election. But leading to that election proper, it was very, very volatile. Then Ekiti, we had a better scenario leading to that, and the outcome as well, not much like we used to have in terms of violence in the past, that you had we recorded serious deaths in the past. But this aside, the Anambra elections had been some level, there had been a level of improvements. Then this one, we didn't even, I can't remember any deaths being recorded leading to this election. And so far since morning, when the election commenced, we haven't had any record of and reports of violence that led to anyone's death. And that alone is personally to me an improvement on the process. And we can only build on that, build on it by making sure where we have openness, the more openness you have in anything that has to do with people, the more confidence people bring into that. So the level of volatility will reduce. And from there, every loopholes that must have been observed can then be improved upon in the subsequent elections.
You spoke about Anambra. Anambra also, I mean, in the Southeast, there were early issues around security.
Yeah.
Again, that contributed to what we saw. But that also shows you that, look, and there are states in Nigeria like Anambra, especially in places like the North. That shows you that in the 2023 election, areas where we already have insecurity might be a challenge for INEC. If I don't know if that's your thought. And what exactly, because I'll get back to the Osun election, but I just want to use that to project, because we've had better turnout in Ekiti and then in Osun. And we'll get the statistics for Osun at the end of the election. But project that into 2023, what kind of challenge INEC might face where we have areas where we have security challenges?
Yeah, you know, our security issue has always been a challenge to us and every developing world, you know, so to say. But then, because I would say Osun and Ekiti had benefited largely because this has been one of the staggered elections, you know, and I wouldn't want us to go to sleep, maybe simply because of what smooth process we've had in Ekiti and this Osun. You just mentioned Anambra elections. So once the environment is volatile, there will be carry over to the election process coming up. So now the issue here is that we're going to have about 33 thereabout elections, you know, simultaneously in 2023, and the INEC and the security agencies must really be on top of their games to make sure more vested interest will play in what is coming up, because we will have had presidential elections, and the fallout of that election will also be a big factor in what we're going to expect in other states' gubernatorial elections.
I want to stay on the issue of volatility when we return, because that was a fear for this election, especially activities of cultists. But we need to get back to Osun to get updates from our correspondent, Ayo Dejimoradeyo. Ayo, where are you? Bring us update from where you are.
Precious, it has been a busy day. I've moved around in Fury today to cover elections, and election has been peaceful. But now I'm in Gabon, Ward 4, Unit 14, Okiofa. And as you can see, here we still have voters. Voting will end by 2:30. It started by 8:30. And they are still here, but we don't know whether INEC officials that are here will extend time for voting. But for now, that is the situation. We can see on the queue we have youth on the queue and some elderly people. I have a man here who will be talking to us about the election. So how's the election been? Okay, you can hear me. You said the election has been peaceful. So it has been peaceful here. Turnout has been impressive. We have security men, the police, civil defense officials. In one of the polling centers, I saw another security man who is not the regular policeman, who also came to ensure that the election is peaceful. So far, so good. Election has been peaceful in most of the places, most of the polling units are visited.
It has introduced technology into this election, not just from this election, from the Anambra election. That's the beavers. We've seen challenges in Anambra, just a few cases reported in Ekiti. But talk to us, in the places where you have been in Osun, how is the beavers functioning?
I can tell you that the Beavers actually performed excellently well in most of the polling units that I've visited. The INEC officials have been well trained on how to use the machines, and they use it well so that people's faces will be captured, their thumbprints were also captured. So it has been working well in most of the areas I visited. So it's working perfectly well. And I need to also commend INEC for doing a yeoman's job. They've been doing well. People, their officials arrived as early as possible at most polling units, as early as 8 a.m. People are also there. So voting started around 8:30 in Ikire and also in Bongo.
Ayo, thank you so much for that update. Our correspondent, Ayo Dejimorado, you're live for us in Bongo, Osun State. Let's now turn to Richard Oshiomhole. Let's look at some of the things instead. But before we get to the issue of the beavers, which I want to talk about, and electronic voting, we were talking about volatility earlier, and that was one of the issues that was raised by election observers. And they were worried that we might have pockets of violence here and there. They talked about accumulation. They had reports about accumulation of light weapons. And they also talked about activities of cultists playing out in this election. And they said they had been playing out from the campaigns. But our correspondent so far has said, especially Ayo, who just said where he's been to has been peaceful. And what do you think is responsible for the relative peace compared to the earlier reports?
Yeah, let me emphasize more on once again on the security arrangements. I'm aware we have about 23,000, I think, minimum of policemen deployed there. So the arrangement had worked out well. It has worked out well. The coordination between different security agencies, the synergy is obvious there. That doesn't mean they aren't pockets of skirmishes here and there, but that's
compared to what we used to see.
Compared to what we used to see, and it had been relatively peaceful, and that is the feelers from everywhere.
But 22,000, about 22,000 police officers in one state, in an election, general election where we have more states. I don't know how sustainable that is to send or to deploy about more than 20,000, between 15 to 20,000 police officers to all of those states. We're going to have more states, more than 30 states having elections. What then should we do to ensure that we have peaceful election in 2023? We do not have the manpower. We've heard that before over and over again. What then can we do?
Fairness. We should focus more on inclusiveness and fairness. The less disgruntledness you have from people, the better. The more sense of belonging they have and confidence in the process, the better.
But is it about fairness or about desperation? Because what we've seen has been more of desperation by some politicians who just want to seize power by all means.
But the good thing is we have more voters getting more knowledgeable about the process and getting wiser. The life, the sacredness of life itself, more people are beginning to see that there's more reason to live than to die. So the more voter education, we have, also that will help. And unfortunately, we haven't been impressed with the National Orientation Agency.
They've left that responsibility solely to INEC.
And that is not good at all. There are people who are so ignorant of the process, and they have to be well tutored about the process and the reasons why they should respect the verdict of the majority, because that is what the whole essence of democracy is all about.
And there were also fears of vote buying. There were talks about vote buying in Ekiti election. In fact, there were videos released on social media by people who claimed they had collected these monies, bragging about how much they had collected. There were also the fears that it might play out in Osun. Like our correspondent Demola said earlier, these things are not done in the open, so he had not seen it. But do you think that might play out in this election, that it is more of, because of the two major parties, the people we saw, the candidates we saw in 4 years ago, that was 2018, are the same candidates now as still the main candidates in this election? Do you think that it is more like an unfinished business for them and a fight to the finish?
It is. And it is because we have more we have poverty playing more role in all this. You know, desperation on behalf of politicians, and unfortunately, politics being one of the biggest enterprise we have today. And if you look at poverty index, it has increased. So you have the essence of humanity being questioned by poverty. So with that, you cannot rule it out. Unfortunately, it's a discrete kind of a game that you hardly get anyone to prosecute for that. If I can't see or remember anyone being prosecuted for vote buying or vote trading, so to say. Even today, I learned the security officials actually caught people there, but there wasn't enough evidence from either parties involved to say, okay, prosecution will work. And you end up wasting time and resources pursuing cases that you cannot get concrete evidence to nail.
And we saw EFCC on ground in Ekiti. Some people were arrested. I don't know what has become of them, if they have been prosecuted. But for you, do you think that it is easier for us to try and mitigate issues around vote buying just before the election, or try and prevent them before the election, or try and mitigate them while the election is ongoing?
Yeah, we can mitigate, but how do we do that? You know, we just spoke about poverty issue here. It's obvious. Most people who collect, I can imagine not all of them will really want to do that, but not everyone has options or options to reject. So they unfortunately see that as opportunity to earn something. Of course, they know the consequence, but they can't get over the temptation of having something in their pockets. Unfortunately, we will have to live with this for a while.
Isn't that what you were talking about the National Orientation Agency? I mean, this would be a good place for them to come in. Because sometimes, again, beyond just poverty, there are people who are comfortable who still collect money. Sometimes, I think most times the mentality is, well, have your 4 years. You probably would not do anything in the next 4 years, but at least let me take this. I'm comfortable with it. But if you spread if it's 2,000, 5,000, 10,000 in 4 years, what do you have, doesn't amount to anything compared to, what consequences that you might likely bear in the next 4 years. But isn't this a good place for NOA to come in and do the enlightenment?
Unfortunately, we do not seem to have them around. I am aware Ministry of Information, they should be under the Ministry of Information and Culture thereabouts. Government should be the teacher and the guardian of the citizens. But and NOA have the responsibility to do that, constitutional responsibility. They are failing, and we've spoken about this time without number, that someone somewhere have to come forward and teach the people, else it becomes the Coolio and the Gang's songs that say, you say I got to learn and no one is ready to teach me.
I asked you earlier, and I want to move away from vote buying now to just some of the things we've seen, the politics itself. I asked you earlier if you thought this was an unfinished business, because those we saw in 2018 are still the main candidates today. But do you see that? Do you think that we might likely see the influence of a third force? Because we've always talked about third force in this country. Do you think? And we've had breakaway candidates from both major political parties who joined other political parties to become their gubernatorial candidate. Would that likely put a dent in the election results and give us a clear winner? Because last time it was inconclusive.
It will be, third force will be a big factor in the next election, because you can see obvious discussion and that is going on, and people having divergent opinions about each of the candidates, what they believe. Unlike the previous election where you had two clear-cut candidates, having to square it up. But this time around, you're having about four. The two main candidates and the two others threatening to play a role of spoilers. So, but what happened before then? The ability of the two major candidates to convince the two others who do not seem to have the geographical spread of the main two, it will really be a big factor. They will have a big say in what happens to the two major political parties candidates.
But there are those who argue that sometimes when you break away, yes, you're taking your loyalists from that political party. But that sometimes people exaggerate their influence within the party, break away thinking that, they have that influence to make significant impact in the election, and that doesn't happen. That perhaps, you are doing either your party a disservice by leaving because you're taking votes away. And then if your party doesn't end up winning, then you have cost your party an election just because you were aggrieved. But let me ask you, between the major political parties, like I said earlier, the election was inconclusive the last time. Do you think that anyone's influence has waned? Because the candidate of the, I think it was the opposition, who really had strong influence the last time, before the election was inconclusive, it looked like he was going to win. And then, it was inconclusive. They had a rerun where, Governor Oyetola won. But do you think that anyone's influence in the last 4 years has waned that would ensure that there is a clear win? Or do you see that it might be very close to call?
Yeah, whoever's influence had waned can be attributed to the erosion of confidence in the process itself, because it's obvious people haven't had the exact expectations, the result of exact expectations they had at the last election coming into this dispensation. And they were, on the streets, you can hear people saying, well, showing some displeasure and disappointment. So winning, if anyone's influence had waned, it is because of the result we've gotten from this for the past 4 years. But however,
sorry, just allow me to put you on hold. I'll give you a few seconds to wrap up your thought, but we need to get to Osun to speak to our correspondent, Rafiu Hamid, who is standing by. Rafiu, tell us where you are, and then what's happening where you are.
Okay, presently I'm at Ward 10, Unit 13, Bolondugo. Precisely, we are in Old Grammar School in Elisha. Where voting is in process, and since the time I got here, the election has been very peaceful. Accreditation is going on, simultaneous accreditation and voting is going on as they've started since morning. The bimodal voter accreditation system, the BVAS, is also working effectively. But as you can see, the election is to be rounded up by 2:30. But from the background, if you can see from my background, the people that are still here to cast their votes, they are about 100 or more than. So that means people really took out in their numbers to exercise their franchise, and that's what differentiates. What would differentiate between the election we are holding today and the one we held in 2018. People have come out, particularly the electorate, came out in their numbers to exercise their franchise to elect the new governor who will be sworn in on the 27th of November 2022 till 2026. So that's the situation here. Presently, the security operatives are also here doing their job effectively. People have voted. People that have voted are sitting down somewhere, waiting for the time that the election will be concluded and counting, sorting and counting will be done. But presently.
All right, thank you so much, Rafiu. Because of time, I know you have a lot to tell us from where you are. I told you I will give you a few seconds to just wrap up your thought. But let me ask you, as we wind down this conversation, for all that we've heard today and all that we've seen, just take a few seconds and use it to project into the 2023 election, how it might likely play out.
Oh, yeah, going into 2023 elections, you're going to have realignments. We still have about 6 months, 8 months to go. And we will have realignment of thoughts of the big players and stakeholders in this, because whether we like it or not, what we have now is the democratic process. Disgruntled or disenchanted about it, we just have to come back. So people will sit back and get more discourse on this, that look, we can get better about it.
All right, we'll continue to monitor that election. Thank you so much for talking to us, political analyst Richard Oshiomhole. It's been great having you.
Thank you very much.